shattered, too unbreakable. Listen here, sweet sister. Whether you think you have one little crack or you are shattered into a billion pieces, this podcast is going to give you the resources, tools, and skills to help piece yourself back together to form a beautiful, unique, solid, and unbreakable masterpiece. You are listening to Shattered to Unbreakable, the Reclaim Podcast. Let's talk. I really want you to tell my listeners what you told me about just removing pressure from everybody during mealtime, the parent and the kid, because there are high pressure situations around eating basically everywhere else. I mean, I know my kids have high pressure situations outside of my house in multiple areas of their life. So when they come to my house, I want them to not feel pressured when it comes to mealtime, because they've been so pressured in the past that now I just mention let's get to the table and everybody's mood just sinks and everybody just gets just so irritated, about even just eating before they even know what we're having. They don't even know and they're already against it. So it's stressful to me because I made dinner or Corey made dinner. It's stressful to them because they don't want to eat it. They don't even know what it is. And it brings back all these memories of past stressors and past triggers that have come up. And so you were talking about in so many ways, the less stressful you make mealtime for everyone, just the better it turns out in the long run.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up because, even thinking more broadly about humans and our needs, we're never going to function well if we're in fight or flight. And so when you need to be out of fight or flight, you need to be in a safe environment. There needs to not be a ton of pressure. So in the situation that you're describing, I think before even worrying about the what's for dinner or how much your kid's eating or any of these other to-do items, I would focus on creating a safe sanctuary at the table where your children come to it and they know that they're going to be heard and respected, and just focusing on the relationships and giving them space to have that autonomy that we're talking about, without having any pressure about if or what or how much they eat. Before you can do any of these skills, you have to feel safe. And I think that, you talk about this all the time in a lot of other aspects, but food is really similar. Mealtime is really similar to a lot of these other things that we're talking about. So using the other strategies you use in your life around setting healthy boundaries or stating your needs or, giving the other person space, if you can bring those skills that you've developed outside the table to the table, I think that is a prerequisite for any of the other picky eating stuff that we're talking about.
Oh man, that's probably going to be my biggest takeaway tonight, is creating a sanctuary at the table. That's light bulb bomb going off. I love the idea. So,
just what you were talking about a minute ago with the co-parenting, and your children are leaving your house and going to this place where it's not safe. And it might not just be a co-parenting experience. It might be your kids doing this at school or at a friend's house or somewhere else. But they're leaving somewhere else and they're having some sort of negative experience around food. I think you can only control what's happening in your house and how your children feel when they're with you. And so making sure that you give them an antidote to that, to show them that food doesn't have to be a stressful experience. It could actually be a place where you can connect. This is where I think the long game really comes in, because they're going to get a lot of messages about I have to sit here until I get dinner, but you might be able to show them that there is another way, and you're going to plant the seeds and water the seeds of their intuitive eater for the long term. So it's, like everything else in parenting, especially when you're co-parenting with someone who is not on the same page as you, that you don't get to reap the reward for a while, but it will be really impactful. And it'll be an experience that they can pull from when they're healing from the other negative experience they've experienced on the outside. Going back to the division of responsibility, I think is always really helpful for me as a parent to know that it's not my responsibility to tell my child how much he needs to eat. It varies so much especially for children and like they're growing. Sometimes they're going through growth spurts, other times they're not. Sometimes they're running around all day, other times they're not. And so some days they're going to be really hungry, and other times they're hardly going to eat at all. And so again, like step back. Remember, we're looking at the big picture. We don't need to hyperfixate on, did they have too much dessert at this one meal, too much sugar at this one meal. But let's focus on like the variety, the feelings around food, and then use that language of change when you're talk to your kids about it. So if they're like, I don't like this, one of my favorite things to say is, you don't like it yet. And then I tell them the story about how I used to hate asparagus when I was a little girl. And then I tried it again in the springtime and it was so good. And like, just like sharing your personal experience of how I used to be this way and then I changed. It like gives them the freedom. And to not, sometimes I think we inadvertently sort of like tease or make fun of our kids when something happens. Like, we say, oh, you're really going to like this. And they're like, no, I don't want to try it. And they finally try it and they like it. It's really tempting to be like, see, I told you so, you liked it. But what happens if someone does that to you? You immediately think, I'm never doing this again. So this is where we just go back to like play it cool. And you can be like, oh, I'm so glad that you tried it. How neat. Move on. Like that is literally like the max that I would ever celebrate something, is like, yay, you. How was your day at school? Like, let's go back to the connection piece.
Oh, okay. Okay. That was what I was going to say for one of my biggest takeaways is like, just cool as a cucumber. Food is just another part of life. This is a safe place at the table. Let's just talk about our day. If you don't want to eat it, don't. And I tell my kids, eat what you want. I do ask them to take a bite, but I don't tell them you have to take a bite. I just say, I would like you to take one bite and see what your taste buds have to tell you. And I started doing that after our podcast episode when you were talking about intuitive eating. I've started to tell my kids, your body will tell you if you need that food or not. So take a little bite, swirl it around in your mouth. If you hate it, you can spit it out. I've told them, like, go ahead and spit it out. If you hate it and you can't swallow it, spit it out. But the fact that you tried it, it allowed your body to tell you if it needs it or not. And they actually have not fought back with me on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to like what a safe environment you're creating. So it's going to be more healing than it probably even seems like it right now when you're in the thick of it.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I feel like just having this conversation with you right now, it makes me feel less stressed about our next mealtime. Just knowing I don't like this
No.
doesn't make me a bad mom if they don't eat everything on their plate. Because I think that's what all of us subconsciously think is like, well, if I'm not feeding them every food group, every meal, what you're saying, go ahead and do that. But if they're not eating it all, you're not the bad mom. And so, I have a lot of pressure on me because I have a watchful eye on me. Anytime I, do something wrong, it's documented and, used against me in all kinds of ways. So I'm like, well, what if they go home and say that XYZ? But as long as I'm offering them a healthy meal, they don't have to eat it. And so, yeah. And then like we were talking a little bit about my kids wanting justice. Like if one of them finishes their whole plate and the other one doesn't, they want me to like, well, I should get a special reward for finishing my plate and they didn't. So the next time that happens where my oldest son is like, well, I ate everything and they didn't, and that's not fair. I'm just going to talk about how everybody's at different stages. Their bodies are growing at different rates. Everybody needs different sorts of nutrients. So, and I'll just give him the freedom too. If you don't want to eat it, it's not going to hurt my feelings. That might be important to tell our kids. If you don't eat it, it doesn't hurt my feelings. You need to listen to your body.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think especially in like the case that you're describing where there's clearly been another message sent that if you don't do this, then, I'm offended. Like another parent is like placing their emotional needs on your son, and that's not his burden to carry. And so like verbally stating that and like relieving that pressure from him. Because I mean, I think that justice thing comes from because he's like working hard and he's like actually fighting, he's ignoring his hunger cues, and it doesn't feel good. He knows that, and it's costly to him, and so he wants like a reward for that. And so giving him the freedom to say like, I love you even if you don't eat this. Like, this
Yeah,
doesn't change our relationship at all. And
right.
even though you know that, I'm sure we all need to hear those things.
Yeah, and it's so easy, and I've done it too. It's so easy as a
Mhm.
parent to say, I slaved away making this whole meal and you're not even going to take a bite. Like, I know I've said that to my
Yeah.
kids before talking
Hmm.
to you, my magic fairy.
Well, and I mean, and you're not alone. And I don't want anybody to like feel guilty because of this, because it is hard. Like, you do work hard, and it is really frustrating when like
Yeah,
you do this and then they don't eat it. I guess I don't, I have like a very low expectation, I guess. I'm like, I wonder why my feelings haven't been hurt, because my toddler doesn't eat what I cook,
right.
like often, very often. Remember, I mean, going back to the division of duty, your job
Hmm.
is not to make them eat every food group. Your job is to serve every
Right.
food group. They get to choose if they eat it or not.
Yeah.
And so I almost feel like the opposite. I'm like, I'm cooking a meal for myself, my husband,
Hmm.
my stepson, like, and then if my toddler eats it, it's like bonus. But I'm kind of
Right.
like banking on the fact that he's probably going to eat his safe foods. And
Yeah.
this meal is exposure. So, maybe that would help to kind of like flip that script a little bit,
It's a
for
mindset
anyone out
switch.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
who's like struggling with like, I'm, work doing this for you. Maybe don't do it for your children. Do it for
Right.
the exposure, but cook for you,
Yeah, cook what
yourself.
you like, what you want to eat, and
Mm-hmm,
then offer it to them. Like, no, I'm cooking this for me because I want it,
mm-hmm,
and you can have some. And then there's this
mm-hmm.
option too, and then maybe it will feel less. You'll feel less resentful. I don't
Yeah.
love to cook, so anytime I
Mm-hmm.
cook for someone, especially the kiddos, and they're not like, I mean, they're like, ew, this is disgusting. And they're not gentle about it, you know? So I'm
Mm,
just like,
yeah.
oh, it took me an hour and I spent a lot of
Right.
money on that food, you know? So, but I think
Well,
it goes back to emotional intelligence. Like your
mhm,
feelings have nothing to do with their diet. So
yes.
you got to
It
pull up your big girl panties sometimes and say, yeah, it might have hurt your feelings, but it's not their responsibility to make you feel good about this meal and just
right,
let them know like, hey, it's okay, now I have leftovers for tomorrow, I can take it
right.
for lunch.
And I will say too, like, it's okay to set other boundaries about like how we talk about food.
Hmm.
So you don't, I don't know, maybe you've heard the phrase, but like, don't yuck on someone else's yum. So
Oh, that's
if you
cute.
don't, if you don't like the food, it's okay. You can say no, thank you. You cannot say blech, I hate this. Like, that's
Mm,
rude, and that's going to hurt someone's feelings. And so it's, you're teaching them manners and like how to interact socially in the world without, again, like making about like the morality of food, or even necessarily like, well, you're hurting my feelings. No, we need to be kind to each other. I mean, it is challenging, and I don't blame anybody for like, your feelings are valid too. Like, it is hurtful when somebody says those.
yeah.
So it,
That's funny.
it's
I
yeah.
just think it's because I don't like to cook very much, like, and maybe it's because I feel like it's some big production when I do cook, and the app has helped me so much because of the 30-minute meals and the grab and go meals that
Mm,
I can pre-prep beforehand when I am feeling like cooking, or if Corey and I want to cook together. I don't mind cooking when I'm cooking with somebody, but when it feels like I'm slaving away for a family that doesn't I know is not going to appreciate it anyway, I'm like,
yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I don't think you're the only one that feels that way. So yes, like, changing that expectation could be really helpful in lessening the resentment. That,
yeah,
no, like, would you be cooking this if you weren't cooking for them?
right,
Like, how would you nourish your body? What would you like to just model
yeah.
nourishing your body? And then you would love to welcome them into that space
Mm-hmm.
and respect their autonomy to say no.
And I haven't even thought about it, but I have, like, looking through the recipes on your app, I kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking they probably won't eat this. So what do I want? What sounds good to me?
Mhm.
Because Corey and I are going to be eating all of it.
Yeah.
So without even thinking about it, I've been doing that. And some of the things they love, in fact, so the kids really don't like chicken. Like I said, they just moan and groan over chicken, but they love pasta. And so one of your meals, I think I'm behind a week in the meals, but that's okay because it's the plan you want.
Do
That's
what you
what I love
want.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did it was the Parmesan basil chicken thighs with the Mediterranean pasta with kale in it,
Mm.
and Oh my gosh, the pasta. Corey and I were like, "Oh, this is so good." And the chicken was good too. But I expected my kids to be all over the pasta because they love pasta. And I expected
Mm-hmm.
them to not like the chicken. Every single one of them ate all the chicken, even the ones who hate chicken. But they did not touch they like took one bite of the pasta and were like, "Nope." And I was like, "Oh, that makes sense because the pasta has kale in it. It's got the olives, and my kids don't love olives. That might be why. And it's got more of a Greek, the feta in there. I wonder if it's just a lot of new flavors.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't make them eat the pasta. We just put it back in the pot
Yeah.
for Corey and I to eat. But they ate all the chicken without anything to dip it in either. Because usually they like drench stuff with ranch. But they didn't even have anything to dip it in, and they ate all of it. Even my girl who hates chicken, I was like, okay.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, the power to change, like the freedom and flexibility. So the fact that they like feel safe enough to try something new
Yeah.
without worrying about being judged, like you did all the right things. That's amazing. They tried the pasta too.
Yeah.
Like even that is a win. So even though they didn't eat it,
Yes, they
they had
tried it
this like
because they
we
love
just had that
pasta.
meal
I
a
think
couple
they
weeks ago
expected to
too, and
love
I
it.
was like, wow, this is big flavor. Yeah, right. But it
Yeah.
is
It was
that
so
is like a
good
very
though.
different because it has like the lemon and it's oh, I know that was one of our favorite meals too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's so many. I
well, you're
think I
doing
favorited that
amazing.
one.
Well, this is so fun.
Oh, I
Yeah,
lost you.
this
Okay,
is
here we back.
it's so fun to hear like what you've done from like the intuitive eating aspect and like bringing that in and
I do
mhm,
want to know what are some like more healthy desserts, and I know you have some on the app because we're gonna try those no bake chocolate coconut yumminess that you had on there. But what are some like safe desserts that aren't so? Obviously, we don't have candy. I'm
mhm.
not too opposed to like cakes and cookies as long as they're not like homemade cookies are obviously better. Homemade cake, we do banana bread quite a bit or zucchini bread. They love that.
Mhm.
So, what are some like examples of healthy desserts I can try?
Yeah. I mean, I am an all foods fit person when it comes to dessert. So we have ice cream and we have chocolate and we have candy. We have all the things. And part of that is like the novelty aspect. There is, again, this is like intuitive eating research, but it's about the like the scarcity aspect. So when we
Mm,
create scarcity around food, that's oftentimes what drives some of that desire to eat more and desire to overeat.
okay.
So like incorporating it or having some of it around and like again, like neutralizing it, making it morally neutral can help. Um,
Mm,
I like to incorporate fruit as a dessert option. And this comes from when I was in college, I did a study abroad in Spain, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys have fruit for dessert. That's so interesting. I've never thought of fruit as a dessert. Why don't I do that when I go home?" And I kind of think that this speaks to like the morality that we have, even when we don't intend to, around different foods. That I've never thought of
yeah.
that. But that's one thing that I love to do is like, ooh,
Yeah.
peaches are in season in August, and like nothing is better than fresh peaches with like a little bit of cinnamon sprinkled on them. Like, aren't you so excited to eat these delicious peaches? I mean, I think fruit is a really good base of like any dessert because you're getting a ton of nutrition. And the I'm sure you know that you can filter the recipes, so you can search for desserts in the app.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. So I can just look in
yeah, so you
there.
can so the desserts in there are they're definitely all like lower sugar versions. So I mean, I enjoy sweets, but I have found this goes back to like that you're refining your palate constantly. And so we just I mean, I'm testing a ton of recipes and we just cook at home a lot. And so sometimes all somebody will make something and bring it over and I'm like, wow, this is like really sweet compared to some of the things that I have on the meal guides that have sugar in them. I'm not anti-sugar, but they're a lot more balanced. So you can
Yeah.
have some like banana muffins and they taste good. They have chocolate chips in them, but they're actually like they're a lot lower sugar than what you would get if you like went to a gas station and bought a banana muffin, for example.
Like whenever I do have sugar, I'm like, ah. We just got Tootsie Rolls at the office and I have like 17 of them in one sitting and then my tummy hurts. So I'm doing that too.
So sometimes incorporating like having adding them back into the house and just like adding them back into your routine can help because this is sort of that like restriction. It's like a restriction binge cycle that's pretty well documented. It's a huge part of our like psychology. You're not crazy if
Yeah.
you've,
That's
been
me.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I'm
it's
definitely one that's tried to be
normal.
disciplined and then failed miserably, and then it's just this vicious cycle.
I mean, it sounds so scary. And I mean, like, again, we can talk a lot about intuitive eating, and maybe we should just talk about like how you handle sugar with intuitive eating, because I think that this is such a huge fear in our culture. And it's true that like sugar
Mm-hmm.
is not necessarily great for you nutritionally, like over consuming sugar, but the complete avoidance is unnecessary and actually can be harmful, I think, in some of this like psychologically how we view food.
Right.
So it's true for us, and it's also true for our kids, like when we're talking about picky eating, it goes back to that, yeah,
Well, like you
restriction or
said, like
morality.
if you eat too much, you feel sick and then you don't want to eat
Mm-hmm.
it again. And so the
Mm-hmm.
next time you have it, you'll eat less because you don't want to feel that way again. And I actually have experienced that with donuts. I love donuts, but if I have two donuts, I feel really sick. If I have one
Mm-hmm.
donut, it's a pleasant experience and I loved it. So when I go
Yeah.
back for that second donut, now I don't go back for it because I'm like, I don't really feel like feeling crappy now. And I did
Mm-hmm.
this with my kids when I think it was like Halloween or whatever, maybe it was Valentine's Day was the most recent. And one of my kids was like, "Can I have this and this and this?" And I was like, "Well, let's talk about that because if you have all three, you might have a tummy ache, might feel a little bit nauseous, might not sleep as well, might, explaining what might happen. If you just have one, not only will you feel better, but you'll have some for later. So it's up to you." Well, they chose to eat all three anyways and said, "I'll be fine." And then they came up to me later and said, "You're right, Mom. I have a tummy ache. I really don't feel good." And I said, "Okay, why don't you have a big glass of water and come lay down next to me and let your body fix itself, or have a cracker or something." And so
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what I ended up giving them. It was something else to try to, I was telling them maybe it'll soak up the sugar a little bit just to get their mind in a different mind frame. But, anyways, they ended up taking a glass of water and coming and sitting next to me. But the next time somebody else had sugar, they said like, "I'm just only gonna have one, Mom." Like, good. So
Yeah.
it does,
And
it
what a
works.
powerful experience. Yeah, it's so much, I mean, it's so much more powerful when you experience it and you
Mm-hmm.
listen to your body than it is when someone else tells you.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's part of the reason why I think that intuitive eating aspect is just it can't be overstated how powerful it is if you can really get in tune with that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm super loving that we have a two-parter because this is going to be two episodes, and so if you're listening, you're just on the tail end of day two. And my biggest takeaway, I guess I have two. One is that mealtime can be a sanctuary, a safe
Mhm.
sanctuary. Two is that mealtime should actually be the least stressful part of your day. And one, it's made easier by not putting pressure on yourself or your kids. And two, it's made easier by getting this meal planning app that you have. So you should
I mean,
definitely download it and try
that's my
it for a
motto.
couple of weeks. See if it helps you because it helped me. Like mealtime went from, even just today when Corey was like, "What should we eat?" I'm like, I don't even want to think about what to eat. And he said, "Well, we have these sweet potatoes." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, there's that cinnamony, appley sweet potato thing." And I just had that for lunch. I didn't want anything else. So, and it totally satisfied me and was very delicious. So, the app takes away so much stress on deciding what to eat.
Yeah, that is the hardest. I
Yeah.
mean, it's my job to meal plan, and literally every week I sit down to make my family's meal plan, and I'm like, ugh, I don't know what to make. Wait, I have my
I
I
have
do the
my app.
same
I
thing.
already planned this for everyone else.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, and it's so good. Like, and now I've started to use the Walmart delivery app for groceries. So I literally just plug in what was on the list and it comes right to my door, and now I have everything ready. And so, and I love how you have the different options, the grab and goes and the 30 minutes and the slow cookers. So it really is, and you can choose as many of them as you want. Like if you
Mhm.
need three slow cooker meals this week, you could do three.
I was just going to say, Brandy has a code, reclaim30, that if you go to peasandhoppiness.com/join, you can create a free account in the app. You don't even have to enter your credit card info, but if you would like premium access, which is all of the 800 recipes and the weekly menus, then use that code reclaim30 and you'll get a free month. But after that,
I
it's only
love it.
$14.99.
Yeah,
So,
which is
um,
so worth it to me. Oh my goodness, so worth it. And you're a registered dietitian, so it's like your everything you plan out is very well balanced and amazing.
yes, great.
All right, guys. Well, first of all, Anne, thank you so much for joining us, because every time we have a podcast together, I learn so much, and it helps my family so much, and my own mind and my stress. And we have a similar outlook on life, which is alignment. And intuitive eating is all about alignment. Picky eating kids, it's all about giving them alignment, and alignment creates this stress-free environment for you to truly be and know yourself. So I love you so much. Thanks for coming on. I'm sure it won't be the last time. And you can find Anne at peasandhoppiness.com. You can also find her on Instagram. She has amazing reels that are hilarious and very relatable. So go look her up on Instagram too at Peas and Hoppiness. So we will see you guys next week. I love you all. Stay sparkly. Thanks for listening, you guys. I wanted to let you know our website has changed. Our new website is called thereclaimstrategy.com. I think it is so fitting. We also have a whole university full of free courses and downloads, so please go check that out. It's called the Reclaim University, or Reclaim You. I thought of it all by myself, so proud. And so hop on there and download some resources. Also, I would love for you to share this podcast. The more women we can get in front of, the more women we can save, and the more children we can affect. I love you guys. Stay sparkly. I'll see you next week.